Hello and welcome to the Remote Future Summit talk about goal setting in a remote environment. I'm really excited about this topic and thank you so much for joining me here today. What I'd like to do is spend a couple minutes talking a little bit about my introduction and background and then get into the objectives of this talk. So my name is Hassan Osman and I'm the Amazon bestselling author of Influencing Virtual Teams. I'm also a Senior Project Management Office or PMO area leader at Cisco Systems, where I lead large and complex projects and programs all across the world and lead a team of over 150 project and program managers to deliver to our customers. I've pretty much worked my entire career with virtual teams, started out working as an entrepreneur all the way up to my current role as a senior leader. And I've also researched issues related to virtual teams in academia. And so I'm really passionate about this subject, and you can find more about me on my blog, thecouchmanager.com, where I talk a little bit more about virtual teams and productivity and project management as well. All right, so let's talk about the objectives of what we're going to cover today. The first thing we're going to discuss are the 2 reasons why goals fail in remote teams. We'll then talk about the elements that every goal should have in a remote setting, and then finally wrap it up with how to assign goal tasks to remote team members. So let's start with the 2 reasons of why goals fail in remote teams. The first reason is ineffective communication. And usually what happens in remote teams is that we assume that what is being communicated to our virtual team is being 100% understood. But because of something called the curse of knowledge, where the knowledge in our own head usually curses us from being to explain it clearly, we actually end up ineffectively communicating what we want to communicate. And with goal setting, it becomes more of a problem because in a remote setting, you basically don't have the facial sort of expressions or the body language to explain or further communicate what you want to communicate. The second reason is a lack of a defined process. So usually in remote settings, we don't have a very defined process or a template or a methodology to come up with a certain goal. We basically come up with it during a meeting, for example, or just talk about it in very ambiguous terms and assume that everyone's going to go ahead and execute on that goal. So those 2 reasons, ineffective communication and a lack of a defined process, increases our chances of failure when we want to set goals in a remote setting. And the takeaway here is that you want to continuously over-communicate with your team. So when you do set up a goal, that you continuously send it through email updates, on team calls and team meetings, for example, to make sure that it is ingrained in your team and what you're going to try to accomplish. And from a defined process perspective, this is what we're going to be talking about today. And my suggestion is to use what's called the SMART methodology. This is an acronym, and this is basically the elements that every single goal should have in your team. So what do SMART goals really mean? SMART is an acronym that refers to each goal being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And let's get into the details of what each letter really means. Now, the S stands for specific, and that is about what will you do or what specific actions will you take to improve in one way or another. So let's say, for example, that we run a SaaS company or a software as a service company where we want to get new customers, new paying customers for our product. Then a specific goal would be that I need to get 120 new leads that translate to 30 new paying customers for our product. In that example, it's very specific because you're targeting 120 new leads that would translate to 30 new paying customers. So you're being very, very particular and precise about what the goal should achieve. Now, the M stands for measurable, or how will you evaluate what you're doing? Meaning, how will you quantify the progress that you're doing to achieve that goal? And using the example of the software as a service campaign, we can say something like, we'll measure this using our sales tool, which has the capabilities of quantifying those leads and measuring conversion rates of leads into paying customers with daily reporting. So now we do have a very simple way of measuring our progress towards our goal. And the A stands for achievable, or what can you accomplish as part of your goal strategy. So you really want to think about what is possible to get done and choose goals that are attainable. So for example, using the same software as a service approach, we can say something like, this is achievable or attainable because we recently hired 2 new salespeople into our workforce. So it is a realistic goal that we can actually achieve. Now the R stands for relevant, or how it will add value to what you're trying to achieve. meaning how does it tie into your overall business and the why behind why you're doing this. So for example, you can say something like, the 30 new paying customers will help us grow and gain in additional revenue that we can reinvest in the business to scale or add like a productivity system, for example, that helps us grow even faster, right? So there's a why behind why the goal is relevant to your team and to your business. And then finally, the T stands for time bound, or when it will be done. So every goal has to have a specific deadline associated with it so that you know that you're going to achieve the results you need within a specific time period. So for example, with our campaign, we can say something like, our search for the 120 new leads will start on July 1st, and we should have 30 new paying customers by October 1st. So you give yourself sort of like a 3-month window to start with a campaign and then end with 30 paying customers. And that way you do time bound it, and you do have a full SMART goal that is specific, that is measurable, that is achievable, relevant, and is time bound by specific time and date. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that you want to publish this SMART goal somewhere. So don't just talk about it on a team meeting. Definitely have it in an email, have it published on a PowerPoint presentation, for example, or listed on one of your collaboration tools. Having it front and center is really important for the team, particularly in a virtual team environment, so that they can refer to it at any point in time. All right, so the next step after we document our SMART goals is to take each goal and then divide them into tasks. Now, goals are usually very high level and I wouldn't say ambiguous, but they are hard to sort of accomplish on their own. And what you need to do is take that goal and then divide it into smaller chunks of work that can be accomplished in less time, for example, or with less scope for each task. So for example, if our main goal is to get 120 new leads and 30 new paying customers, then a task to support that goal would be to ask or send an email to our existing customers and incentivize them to share with their friends, share with their colleagues, and maybe give them like a month off if we do get a new paying customer, for example. So that's one task that accomplishes that goal, but it is smaller in scope and it is a lot more manageable. And another example of a task would be maybe the founder of the company to go on 10 different podcast shows and talk a little bit about the product, for example, offer it for free, and gain a little bit of that advertising aspect of it, right? So that would be another task that supports the overall goal of getting 120 new leads as well as 30 new paying customers. And each one of those tasks will ultimately support the overarching goal. And it's really important to do this step so that you don't overwhelm your team and add a little bit of clarification and structure to your goal setting process. All right, and now after you take that goal and divide it into tasks, you want to start to assign those tasks to your team members. And the best way to assign tasks is using something called the 3 W's. And the 3 W's is referred to who, what, and when. So the who refers to a specific person or a specific individual that is responsible for completing that task. And that person would be ultimately accountable to getting that work done. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the who is the name of one individual. It can't be a group of people, because what will happen is something called the bystander effect will kick in, where everyone's responsibility is no one's responsibility, and you end up with a task that doesn't get done. And so it's important to assign the task to one person. So instead of John, Carla, and Sam, you're going to complete this task. It would be John, you're responsible for completing this task, and Carla and Sam, you will help him out. So that way you have a very specific who. Now, the what is a description of the actual task. You don't want to leave anything up to interpretation or assumptions, so be very clear cut about it. And if you did a good job in dividing that goal into subtasks, it should be fairly straightforward here. And then finally, with the when, this is about being very specific with your deadline on when you want something to get accomplished by. So instead of saying something like, I need this in the next few days, you should say, I need this by Friday, November 22nd at noon Eastern time, right? So you're being very particular and precise about when a deadline needs to be done, because otherwise things just expand and they never get done. And so those are just the 3 W's of who, what, and when. And here's a quick example. Carla, I need you to send me the email draft by Thursday, July 16th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And there you have a very clear who. you have a clear what, and you have a very clear when. And you should do that with every single one of your tasks that supports your overall goal. All right, so here's a quick summary of what we just covered. Make sure that each goal is a SMART goal, meaning it's simple, it's measurable, it's achievable, it is relevant, and it is time-bound. And then translate each goal into multiple tasks that you can achieve in less time and with a smaller scope. And then finally, make sure that each assigned task has the 3 W's associated with it, meaning a who, a what, and a when, so that you make sure that things get done. And that way you will have a defined process that helps you accomplish goals in a remote team setting. I hope you found this helpful. And please do feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Again, you can reach me at thecouchmanager.com. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you.